Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Goulart. I'm the Executive Vice President here of Marketing and Products at Think to Perform. Today is an exciting day, an exciting chapter for Think to Perform. We're talking about behavioral financial advice, and I have with me the CEO of Think to Perform, Doug Lennick, who has been the CEO at the helm of this company for over 20 years. We get to say that now, which is really exciting. Over 20 years.
That's right. And I already had a full career before that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what we're talking about today is elevating the client and advisor experience through behavioral financial advice. We're going to talk a lot about what that term means.
And by the way, I really didn't think of this until now, but the "and" here is very important. Elevating the client and advisor experience. So this is about the client, and it's about the client because it's about you. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah, there you go.
There you have it. Sorry
to
interrupt.
No, you're good.
Good.
And why it's so important today is today we're going to be talking about our coursework, behavioral financial advice, and some of the new things that we've been developing here at Think to Perform for over a year and a half to be able to share with you what those things are. So to get to the future, we're going to have to go through some of the old of the past. But as it relates to our subject matter expertise here, Doug himself, as he had mentioned, had a previous career before starting Think to Perform. He was the Executive Vice President of Advice and Retail Distribution for what is now Ameriprise Financial. In that capacity, he led a field force of 17,000 for a little over 10 years, right? So
yeah, it was, yeah. Well, the
with
whole
a little
organization,
steps up.
yeah. It grew to 17,000 corporate and field people. So it was, but most of the advisor business part was over 10,000 advisors, and then about 7,000 support people, and had a great experience. And I know a number of you are either alum from Ameriprise or you're at Ameriprise, and so I certainly am pleased to have had my my education in financial services there, and was able to bring to the company concepts related to behavioral financial advice, and that's what we're here talking about today.
Awesome. So before we get into our content, we do have a poll for all of you to go through really quickly. Will help us help you and give you some insights into what this program is all about. So we will launch the poll. Do you currently hold the BFA designation? Yes or no? Give us, Doug and I, a little bit more of a snapshot.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, this is like choose your movie thing. So depending on the answer, there will be slight twists in how we would present our material, because you might
pick
think,
your own adventure.
That's what it's called. Pick your own adventure. So your vote will help determine how we sway this. It's not going to change it completely, but we'll take into consideration where you're at already.
Awesome.
So what do we see?
We're at 30% yes, 71% about, 29, 30% yes, 71% or 70.
Yeah, that's
no,
great.
Which is great.
That's a great chunk of behavioral financial advisors. So I'm happy you're here, and the rest of you as well. And so together we're going to have, I think, a good discussion. Share with some of you who are already BFAers where things are going, and for those of you who aren't yet there, encourage you to at least consider it and give you a couple reasons why, but also a lot of the how-tos and what-tos. So that's all in there. So we're excited to be here with you today.
Exactly. So we're talking about what it is, as Doug just went through. So here's the agenda. What is behavioral financial advice? And one of the things that is, again, a very exciting moment here is that we get to share with you a quote from one of the most recent podcast episodes that we've launched just today. We host a podcast called Making the Ideal Real, and our latest guest was Morgan Housel, who wrote the book on the psychology of money. He has a new book coming out in November. And Doug, why don't you just give us a little, read the quote? I guess,
I will.
And then,
I've listened to this. By the way, Ryan said this is one of our most recent. Let's amend that. This is literally our most recent. It is released today. So for those of you that have the opportunity to do so, I would check it out on, it's Ryan Goulart's Making the Ideal Real podcast. And I would suggest you watch it. Those of you that are at Ameriprise, if you haven't done it yet, and those of you who aren't, you might want to watch the Bill Williams episode as well. They both speak similarly about the role that behavioral financial advice plays in the real world today. And I love what Morgan says. He says it, I'm going to use the Doug Lennick intonations. So this won't be trying to do it the way Morgan does it, but it'll be how I feel. And this is Morgan. To use a different analogy, what most people want from their doctor is someone in a white coat with a diploma on a wall to look you in the eye and say, you're going to be okay. Oh, and by the way, he doesn't say this, but if you're not going to be okay, being able to say you're not going to be okay in a empathetic, compassionate way. But he goes on, financial advisors are the same. Even if all of the information is out there online for free. And by the way, all of the information is out there online for free. Where the value is added is a financial advisor who knows what they are talking about and looks their clients in the eye and says, you're going to be okay. That is massively important skill that people are going to pay a lot of money for. It's not the information. It is the emotional component to it that is the value. Now, many of you know I've been thinking about this for many, many years. So this goes way back into my career, now spanning 50 years. But I was really thinking this was going to be the value proposition for the advisor industry. I started thinking it was going to happen in the 90s. And of course, here we are, 2023. It has been happening thanks to many of you, but it's taken the industry a long time. Those that are there have the advantage. I'm quite sure Morgan Housel is correct.
And we use this to help us define what behavioral financial advice is. It is exactly what Doug just mentioned, using the emotional component where the value is, the advice, to connect that to your clients. So what behavioral financial advice is, it's a framework. It is a practice of integrating traditional financial practices like Monte Carlo simulation, asset allocation, and modern portfolio theory with neuroscience and psychology to help make better choices when emotions are present. Anything to add there?
That you said it really well. I mean, the real game here is being able to make optimal decisions in the presence of competing and difficult to deal with emotions. That's the deal. And humans will remain emotional at least for the foreseeable future. So I don't know that we're going to be vulcanized anytime soon. So we will be emotional beings. And the data all say that emotional beings prefer emotional support from emotional beings. That's not a shock. The other side of this is the subjective, as you're talking about. So, but the goal, and you can read it yourself, the goal of behavioral financial advice is really to have the advisor have conversations tying to clients things that they really care about. What we absolutely know is that values-based decision making, when we think about our values, this will sound really odd to you, but when you reflect on your personal values before making a decision of any kind, you actually will improve your capacity to make a decision. And that is absolutely true when it comes to money. So we know it and we help people do it. So it helps them really stay focused on the behaviors that need to change in order for them to live in alignment with their values. That's the deal.
Talk to us a little bit too of just that last phrase where it says resulting in effective usage of the financial plan for you and your clients. How does that impact the financial professionals here on the call, learning more about behavioral financial advice?
Well, when you talk about effective use of the plan, one of the things that we have all experienced, all of you have experienced, is that planning is an ongoing thing. A document, the planning document needs to be a living document. At some point, anytime you can punch print and it'll print that day, but it's a document that needs to keep changing over time. And so what we realize the opportunity is the ultimate achievement of the goal. And that requires behavioral alignment with the goal and the activities associated with achieving it. So I gotta behave, The role of the advisor is to help the client execute the behaviors necessary to achieve their goals consistent with their values. And that process of leading their behavior is where the game is won or lost. And where the mistakes are frequently made are in the presence of competing and difficult to deal with emotions. So you have heard me, some of you have heard me say this, some of you have heard other colleagues of mine say this, whether it's Ryan or Kyle DeBell or Chuck Walkendorfer or Elena Beckius or whoever it happens to be. We recognize that humans are going to be influenced by our emotions. And so we recognize that the emotional brain is wired to avoid danger and it's wired to pursue opportunity. The wiring is triggered by emotions. The role of the advisor is to be aware of that, understand what those emotions might influence the client to consider doing, and to help the client make a smart, responsible, values-based decision anyway. That's your job. And people will pay handsomely for it. And the reason is their investments will start to work for them, because the data say investments work, investors don't. Well, your job is to help the investment work for the investor, not for the investment. That's the game. Did that help?
Yeah.
That's how I think about it. That brings me up to a Perrier.
Yeah. There you go. Well, and so we've talked about what is behavioral financial advice. Why is it important to the client experience? And you see here that there are a number of factors that play into why a conversation like the one that Doug just described is important for you and important for the clients that you serve. One of those reasons is that we have, within the last, even you go back 5 years, have experienced a high degree of volatility and uncertainty when it comes to the economy and market. That produces a high degree of stress, not only for you, the financial professional, but for your clients. And so that influences their behavior as it relates to their readiness or aptitude to take on risk.
Yeah, well, just yesterday, Ryan and I were doing, with a couple of our other colleagues, we were working with one of our clients in an ongoing development of their own use of behavioral financial advice. And one of the advisors was talking about how he helps people with that first bullet point. And he talked about the smart money philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked very casually. He basically said, here's what I do for people. I help them get prepared for the truth. The truth is uncertainty. And then he asked some questions like, do you have any idea when you might die? No. Do you think while you're alive, do you know for sure if you're going to be healthy all the time, or might there be a chance you could get sick or hurt or need some kind of care? Well, I don't know. Well, these are uncertainties. And do you think while we're alive, healthy like we are today, that there might be some market volatility, that maybe it'll go up, maybe it'll go down? Do you think that could happen? Yeah. Well, let's get ready for all of that. Let's get ready for the truth. And here's what we know. And when Ryan and I wrote the book, Leveraging Your Financial Intelligence, the subtitle At the Intersection of Money, Health, and Happiness, we were able to demonstrate that if you can actually help people prepare themselves financially for uncertainty, it will reduce their stress. If it reduces their stress, it will improve their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, and their financial well-being, and their wonderful happiness quotient goes up. And that's a wonderful thing. And that's what advisors get to do for people. And that's why people are going to love their advisors more in the future than they have in the past. As you see in the second bullet point, and this has been one of my pet peeves forever. And I was guilty of this at times, incidentally, and I'm sorry that I occasionally in my own career sold what was easy, not what was necessarily the best thing to do. So we've often sold what is emotionally easy to get the consumer to buy. Now, when I'm being snarky, which I'm not today, but I'm being clever today. So this is the clever way to say something I usually say in a snarky way. I used to call that needs-based selling. I need a commission, you need this product because it's easy for me to get you to sell it. And you can fill in what that product is. You know what those products are. What are easy products to sell during market volatility? And that is needs-based selling, but it's not the needs of the client. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. That's why I don't have to be snarky. But in some audiences, Ryan has heard me do snarky. So that was clever. So that's the concept. And that's why it's so important. The client really needs this. You've heard me say now for years and years and years, the game is two-sided. On one side, it's technical, it's fundamental. On the other side, it's behavioral. You have to play both sides of the coin. I myself, although I'm not a practicing financial advisor, I maintain both my CFP and my BFA designations. And by the way, I understand that my good friend and colleague at Ameriprise, Bill Williams, those are his only two designations. Thank you, Bill. Not because I have them, but it's kind of nice to be like you. So with that, let's move on.
Yeah, and I mentioned at the front of our time together that we have some exciting news that we will share at the end of our presentation. But to get there, we have to go backwards. We have to go back in time to a time where that really founded our thinking and understanding as to why this topic of connecting behavioral financial advice to you, the advisor, and to the client is so important. And that starts with understanding two main competencies, moral competency and emotional competency. And do these things, these competencies, these skills and abilities impact your clients? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the answer is yes. Obviously, we put it right there, and I'll just expand on that. So rather than just give you the yes or no answer, I'll give you the essay. The data is quite compelling. Cognitive and technical competencies are necessary, but they are not sufficient. And let me be clear. I want to make sure that that I am communicating effectively, because sometimes this part gets missed. Cognitive and technical competencies are necessary, full stop. And they are not sufficient. So you have to have them. They are table stakes. You do not get to play without them. The differentiators will be moral and emotional. We fortunately were involved in a study that's been supported by other studies since, but we have the data for our own that we can speak to a little bit. The research was actually conducted by the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence in Organizations, CREIO.org, for those of you that are interested in what the Institute does, CREIO.org. And Think to Perform coordinated the research. CREIO conducted the research. The two behavioral scientists responsible were the current co-chair of the consortium, Rob Emmerling, and the late Lyle Spencer. And basically, it was a longitudinal study, took 4 years. The question was, what are the competencies of an advisor or an advisor team that results in a superior portfolio return and experience for the client? And it turned out that the answers, the top answers, were emotional and moral. And it turned out that the advisors who demonstrated a behavioral application, so we're not talking about being honest by not lying, we're talking about being honest by telling the truth. They're different. You know, one says, I have integrity, I did not lie, I didn't say anything. The other says, I have integrity, I did not lie, and I told the truth. What we have here are the advisors who tell the truth and told the clients the truth. Turns out they had better performance. The single most important competency that the advisor needed to have for the client to have a superior return, the single most important was integrity. The second was client service orientation. Both of those are moral competencies. The third was concern for order and quality. That's a technical competency. The next three were all emotional competencies. Things like teamwork, self-confidence. What am I missing? You even have it.
No, I do have it somewhere.
You do. I would.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But those things are there, and the cognitive doesn't even enter. We don't have it on the slide, but the cognitive competency, which is necessary, is number 7, conceptual thinking. And the data say the people who did it really well for the clients, and all of these people, all of the advisors were successful, incidentally. Every one of the advisors was financially successful. 100% of the advisors were successful. Historically, the industry had said, if our advisors are successful, our clients must be. But the data doesn't confirm that. So it turns out advisors could make money without necessarily doing a terrific job for the client. So you can see the cumulative return for the S&P. You can see the top advisors outdid it. That doesn't suggest you're going to outdo the S&P, but they happen to over that period of time. The bottom advisors fell way, way, way short. They did 3.8% cumulative return over a 4-year time frame. So that's a big deal. So what do you have to do? There's a shocker. You have to stay invested. And a lot of people say, is the smart money thing you talk about, Doug and Ryan and Kyle and everybody, is that really just a buy and hold? No, it's a buy and be smart. It's when you need money, take money from a smart place. But staying invested means I'm not pulling out of everything, ever. I'm not going to be out of everything. I might take money out of cash today. I might take it out of the market tomorrow. But stay invested is critical. And then continuing to dollar cost average into those things that have share values so that I'm buying in low, buying high. We're adding money. The money we put in matters more than what happens after it's in there. And we see that in 401ks all the time. If you wonder, how does one figure out how much they're going to have in their 401k? 87% of it has to do with how much you put in. 10% is your allocation. 3% is your investment selection within the allocation. And of course, rebalance regularly. These are things that advisors do. Behavioral advisors simply help clients stay the course. And when the client needs money, they say to the client, whenever you need money, if it's a bear market or a bull market, if someone goes to the hospital or someone goes to a nursing home, whenever anybody needs money in the family, there's going to be a smart place to get it. That's what the concept is. That's what clients need to do.
And when do you learn these 3 behaviors? Like when, is this like first year advisor behaviors that you learn as a newly minted financial advisor in the industry here?
I did, well, when I started, I did, I will say, so I I started my training in the fall of 1973. 1972 was the first year the Dow ended the year over 1,000. And I think it ended at 1,020. There was a little blip in there, and but really the next year it ended over 1,000 was 10 years later. So it was 1982, and it ended at 1,047, something like that. So it went from 1,020 to 1,047 over 10 years. And I jokingly say it didn't go straight up those 27 points or so. It kind of zigged and it zagged. And back then we learned if you wanted to have more money, you had to save some. In the 80s, we learned if you wanted to have more money, you had to refinance your house. So the game changed. And all of a sudden, we learned at the end of the 80s that that wasn't that good an idea all the time. And the market exploded. And then we keep relearning some of these things. So we've seen the markets go up and go down. And the smart money philosophy has always worked. So the smart money philosophy throughout my entire career has worked. And I love that about it. It obviously requires that we have the means to put dollars into those various areas so that I can afford to put some money in the cash account, and I can afford to own some equities, and I can afford to have some life insurance and some long-term care insurance and all those kinds of things. But you are working generally with a mass affluent to affluent market. So these people can afford it if they have your help in helping them do it. And it's the behavior that wins or loses. We behave our way into where we're at. That's the deal. That's the other one, achievement orientation.
There you go.
So that's the one I was missing. So I gave you the others in order. Well, I gave you the top ones, but you will notice of those 6, 3 are emotional: teamwork, self-confidence, achievement orientation. Those are all considered emotional competencies. And the other 2, the top 2, are moral competencies. Concern for order and quality is all the planning and all those processes, all that work that you do that keeps things in compliance. You know, you're not doing it just for compliance. It actually makes a difference for your clients. And of course it is in compliance as well. So those are the results. We find and that's how we recognize what we are aiming at doing in the work is developing our differentiating competencies. And we do that through some of the tools and techniques we'll talk about here in a moment.
So let's go to how. We've talked about why, we've talked about what, we've even gone historically, we went backwards into learning a little bit more about where did this concept of behavioral financial advice come from? And we know that behavioral financial advice helps clients overcome those elements of behavioral finance, which are heuristics, framing effects, and biases.
And by the way, if you ever have said, I'm not biased, that's your clue to know you're biased. So if you've tried that, if you just try that, just say, I'm not biased, and then let somebody say, well, there you go. That's a bias. Sounds silly, but it's true. Am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
So we're all biased.
We're all biased. We have our own bias here at Think to Perform too, of just like, what does the world look like? And of course, everyone gets their own point of view. What did you say something about that?
Well, yeah, truth has many colors, reality has many sides.
That's what I was looking for.
Nobody gets to see them all. You know, so we, Jack Rosenberg is sitting over here off camera, and he's between me and that we have the screen and the camera in between us. If we hung a sphere between the two of us, and the sphere that he could see, the hemisphere that he could see was blue, and the hemisphere that I could see was red, and only Ryan could see both hemispheres because he can see where he's at. But if Ryan said to Jack, what color is the sphere? What would Jack say? What would you say?
Blue.
Blue. So he'd say blue. And if he asked me, what would I say?
Yellow.
Red. His daughter Reese says yellow.
I know his daughter Lisa. She says yellow. What's the color? Yellow. What's that color? Yellow. She's 2. She actually knows the color, but she likes yellow. I don't.
Yes,
She likes the
does.
word. I think it's the word more so than the color.
But the,
Anyway, but the point is, what you're just saying. None of us get to see the whole thing. That's the deal. And so what we're trying to do is round out our understanding and be able within that to help people overcome these biases that influence their decisions. And they get in the way. They definitely do. I personally have been guilty professionally in my business career. The ones that have killed me most are overconfidence. Remember, self-confidence is one of the competencies we need to be successful. Overconfidence suggests self-confidence has gone too far. By definition, overconfidence means too much. That's why they call it overconfidence. That's too much. So I am sometimes too confident. I sometimes suffer from excessive optimism. And I absolutely suffer from the confirmation bias. So I do genuinely prefer input that supports my existing point of view. And so I have made a point of developing self-management processes that allow for me to keep my periscope up so that I can actually seek to understand other people and not come in so damn sure that I'm right. Although I am right a lot. And I bet some of you struggle with this. That's the way it is. And so we have to deal with this. That's why this is important for the client and the advisor. I cannot give away that which I do not have. If I have ways to help myself deal with my biases, and I have ways to help you deal with yours, I can give that to you. And if you develop that, you can then give that to your clients. So it's an and. This will profoundly change your life and your clients.
so how? What we're saying is great. We're talked about how this impacts you as a financial professional and how you serve your clients, that there's data that suggests that doing so improves the client's portfolio performance. How do we go about doing this? And the great thing about our program of behavioral financial advice is that it comes through behavioral finance. So what we were talking about, biases, heuristics, framing effects, rules of thumb that help us make decisions in real time without having to exert that much energy. What we're suggesting that you as a financial professional and your clients do is pause and take a step back and look at information in a different way so that you give yourself the opportunity of choice.
Well, and that's really critical. Keep one of the things that happens to all of us as humans mature, we attempt to take shortcuts to get things done because we just had figured out a shortcut. I'm going to take a shortcut. And unfortunately, sometimes when we take shortcuts in financial services or in health services, sometimes those shortcuts result in us not diagnosing the situation as appropriately as we could have. We didn't know the client as well as maybe we could have. And so we really need to get to know that client, and we really need to get to understand where they are coming from. And we need to help them go to where they want to go. That's our job, to help them go to where they want to go, to help them align their behaviors with their goals, which are then in alignment with their values. If they get to live their values every day, we already know life will be more fulfilling, more enjoyable. It'll last longer. One way to improve client retention is to help them live longer. So go ahead, reduce their stress, let them live a little bit longer. So discover, rediscover. One of the things Don McPherson, who does a 12 Geniuses podcast, he sent me something from George Raveling recently. And George Raveling, many of you know, a famous coach and actually the possessor of the speech that Dr. King gave, I Have a Dream. But he talks about life is really about learning, unlearning, and relearning. And that's really what we're talking about here. Discovery, rediscover, because the life continues to evolve and change. Some of our values remain indefinite. The data say most of the time, the values that last the lifetime tend to be the moral values. So we learn right from wrong, literally in the first couple of years of life. So a couple of, I've got 3 guys in the room. 2 of them have children. They have admitted to, Jack might have some, he's never said, but we don't know. But these are young children. And we know, the data say, the science says that in those first couple years of life, the child needs what we call the somatic bath. That means they need love and they need safety. If they get those 2 things, then their brain will develop and they will get to learn things like values. They'll get to learn right from wrong. If they don't get that in those first couple years, they got a problem. And that's a difficult thing. So we start there and they begin to know. So now Reese, 2 years old, between ages 2 and 5, 2, 6 maybe, it'll move around a little bit, but she's going to know right from wrong by the time she's 6. And she will always know right from wrong the rest of her life. That will be true. So those morals, now, will we occasionally stray? I certainly have. I like to say moral intelligence and moral competence are not the same thing. I have been morally intelligent and morally incompetent in the same moment. And how can one achieve that? Well, I have lied in my lifetime. I didn't discover I lied later. I lied early. I just found out on Sunday. I hated to learn this, and it helped me know something about myself. And I mentioned it to Ryan and Reese's mother, that the thing that we get to know, and this won't happen to their child, but the data say that smart kids, the kids with the higher IQs, they learn how to lie sooner because they figure out the shortcut sooner and they take it. They say, well, if I just say this, then dad or mom or, no, I know Kyle's kids would never do that, but in general, think about that. So it's a process of discovery, rediscovery, continually changing over time. And that is really powerful. So I look at myself, my values are family. That wasn't my values until I had a family. I mean, I was part of a family, but when I was just the child of a family and didn't have one of my own, I didn't have the same sense of value. Happiness, I've always valued happiness. I haven't had to change that. Wisdom, I pretty much have valued that as long as I can remember. Integrity, I value it. I wish I always was it. It's service. I've always valued service. My whole life, I valued doing things that help other people. And health, I have not always valued health. But those are my values. And they have changed. They have evolved. And my behaviors have changed. My health behaviors have had to change a lot for a whole host of reasons. And so that's really critical. I am going to be 71 next week, I think. And I am feeling great. And one of the reasons is I am living in alignment right now with my values. And my financial advisor understands my goals. He understands my values, and he helps me make decisions to act or to not act consistent with all of that stuff. And thank you, Pete, for doing that. Because I need an advisor you know, one might say, why can't you just give your own self your own advice? Because I can't help myself as well as I want by myself with my own emotional issues. I could use somebody else to hold my hand.
And throughout behavioral financial advice too, we teach you skills, we teach you tools. We've mentioned them throughout our program today about the smart money philosophy, about the values exercise. These are tools that we teach with a framework around them for you to discover some new things about your clients that you get to help with.
I'll give you an example that Ryan and I we're actually working on in a case study that's going to be part of our new coursework. But there is a client situation. Clients are doing quite well, making good money, living a good life. But as they look at their life and they start thinking about retirement, they'd like to retire. And what a lot of us have discovered is many people just want to keep doing what they were doing in retirement, which means it's going to cost the same. Some people actually want to do more, which means it might be more expensive to be retired. In this case, these people, as they looked at the values that they had, they thought they would be able to retire a little bit sooner if they did some of the activities that were free, that were also consistent with their values. So, for example, they could do things, what it was, like family and relation and adventure. I mean, little things like you might go for a walk, you might go camping. They all of a sudden, things that would have cost a lot of money to do could be done for less money. And they thought, you know, it's the activity with our family. That's what's the fun part. It's not the spending of the money or going to a destination site. We don't all have to get on an airplane to get together. Maybe a couple of us do, but maybe not everybody. So what we were able to do, if you know your client's values, you can say, you will be able to afford to live on less because of what you're going to do to fulfill your life. Or you can't afford to live on less because what you say is important to you is expensive. And that's okay. Your job isn't to tell them what to value, but to find out what it is, and then to help them develop a financial plan that supports them living a life that allows those values to show up every day, because that's what gives fulfillment. What makes you feel good is the process of doing the things. Being a family, that makes you feel good. So educate your client, you go for it.
Yeah, well, this has everything to do with providing opportunities for your clients to learn more about whether or not their behaviors or goals, or in the case that you might be using our values exercise, if their values have changed. Education here provides a lot of an opportunity to use concepts throughout behavioral financial advice that get at those biases, heuristics, and framing effects. We want to give both yourself and your clients an opportunity to create some time in between when they hear something and learn something before they go do it. It's creating some buffer zone between stimulus and response, and having an opportunity to have their goals and their values as a guide as they make better choices. That's really how you begin to provide your advice and begin to educate your clients in a different way.
You know, and I forgot to mention that the 30% of you who are BFA designees, the data say that of all of our BFAs, 99%, I just saw the data and I forgot to mention it, but 99% of BFA respondents see developing a holistic understanding of their clients as a key skill of their job. 94% use the values exercise to help that happen. So, and 86 say they consistently provide support in their clients in assessing change over time. So I wanted to add those data points in there, because here, as we get into education, this is also where we get into the comment that we were hearing from our client JD yesterday, that you got to educate them, teach them the smart money philosophy, and it's immediately comforting. It's like, yeah, well, that pretty much covers it. You know, I'm going to be ready for two things. We're going to be ready for the financial implications of living, because living costs money, and we're going to be ready for the financial implications of dying. While we're alive, we're going to be ready for being healthy and for market volatility, but we will also be ready for not being healthy. So we're going to be ready for volatility. We'll be ready for good health and bad health. We'll be ready for death and life. We'll be ready for all of that. That's profoundly simple. Remember, 3 levels of understanding. Complex is in the middle. So it's simple, complex, profoundly simple. What we are endeavoring in behavioral financial advice is to achieve simplicity on the other side of complexity, what we call profound simplicity. Educate your clients, teach them the philosophy.
And then finally, the last of the BFA skill sets is reframe, plan, and take action. This has everything to do with beginning to take a different idea, different viewpoint on where one might sit on a current decision that they would like to do. We have a framework, a decision-making framework that we teach you throughout behavioral financial advice for you to take on for yourself, while also giving you the tools and skills and scripts to be able to talk through how to be able to help your clients make better choices with their money when emotions are present. What I'm alluding to is something called the 4 R's, which begins with recognizing the emotions and the thoughts and the actions that you're experiencing, reflecting on your values and goals and bigger picture ideas to give yourself that opportunity to engage your logical brain. Reframe, which is all about thinking about the opportunity of changing your mind. What happens if I change my mind? And then finally, responding in a way that is consistent with your values, your principles, and making a decision with that. Giving your clients, do you mind if I weigh in with what you think your options are? That is a reframe question. It provides them an opportunity to assess if their behaviors, if they're spending too much money, if they're not saving enough, if they aren't rebalancing, all of those things that we've talked about. Getting back to the study, the advisors that were able to behave with integrity, they were comfortable asking these questions.
Exactly right. You know, and this is kind of interesting as we think about this. We need to recognize these questions as we weigh in, and so when you think about it and you recognize what's going on, and Ryan walked you through self-recognition. The second part of that is then do the same with your clients. Recognize what's going on with them, and then this capacity to reframe. Reframing is a skill. It's not a weakness. Let me say that again. Reframing is a skill. It's not a weakness. We live in a political climate where we have been told that if we change our mind, we're weak. Changing your mind is a sign of taking in new information and being able to assess that information against what you thought might have been true. And that new information helps you change your mind. So changing your mind is a skill. It's a strength. It doesn't mean you should just be waving in the wind. It's your mind, but your mind needs to be grounded in your moral compass, not the wind. Not the wind. It's not, I'm not going to check the wind and see what ways the wind is blowing today so that I can decide what my opinion is today. I'm going to decide what my opinion is today based upon what's inside of me, not what's out here. And so we want you to help your clients understand that it's okay to reframe your thinking, make a different choice. So the client that's panicking, that wants to get out of the market at the wrong time, you can help them reframe. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay. No, I said I'd get out if the market went down. I can't change my mind. I said I'd get out. No, it's okay. It's okay to change your mind. It's necessary to change your mind. By the way, I should point out to you, if you needed money today, we have a smart place for you to get it. So you don't have to bail out of the market. If you bail out now, you're going to lose the money. Yeah, it's your job to help them through that. That's the integrity that Ryan's talking about. That's the compassion that we're talking about. Actively caring about the well-being of the client.
And that's where the new coursework comes in. We have been training on this topic, behavioral finance, behavioral financial advice, since 2006. We brought it online in 2013, and we have taken it on our own and revamped the coursework here in 2023. What the new coursework looks like, it still focuses on everything that Doug and I have been sharing about the BFA skill set, knowing your clients, educating them, and giving them an opportunity to reframe and plan and take action with some revisions. And those revisions have to do with connecting to financial stress and its impact on physical health. There is a lot of data to suggest that financial stress, when high, impacts one's physical health.
Not favorably.
Not favorably, negatively. And you, as a financial professional, are in a great position to provide opportunities, solutions to help decrease financial stress, therefore improving your client's physical health. There's a lot to talk about that. On that, we don't have time to get into it, but within the new coursework, there is a lot there that builds that part of the value proposition of behavioral financial advice out further. We also have scripts, demonstrations, videos that accelerate adoption. So for those of you that have been practicing behavioral financial advice and have been doing it yourself for a very long time, and we've taken your input via focus groups and used that information to build out scripts that will help you get to a better place with behavioral financial advice by helping your clients even further. And I mentioned too that there's different conversations, there's videos, there's various ways to help you integrate your learnings into your practice, because what we know to be true is that adult learning is a function of three things: 10% coursework, 20% coaching, 70% experience. The behavioral financial advice program is built on all three by providing different elements throughout the coursework that help you internalize the concepts so that you can go out and have experience with it with your clients.
Now, our colleague Ray Kelly would say that 20% is the great multiplier. And the reason that is so is the 20%, the coaching helps the individual understand what the 70% should be. So if I get good coaching, the experiences I have will be better. I will learn through my experiences, good and bad. But if someone can help me have some good ones, that would be okay. So the experience will teach me, but my coach can help me understand what are some of the things I could and best experience. That's the concept.
So we are launching this new coursework on July 1st, which often felt like a very far away land. It is not. It is in less than 2 weeks.
And Kay May tells me that she has scheduled enough time on my calendar next week to do up to 30 hours of this. So I'm going to do it myself next week. I have the BFA. I hope that I am good at this. I believe. In fact, I think I'm in one of the videos. It'll be fun seeing me. So in the video.
So all of you will have an opportunity to achieve a discount as part of attending, and it's a awesome opportunity to get in early on our new coursework. The price does increase on July 1st, so you'll be receiving some emails from us to learn a little bit more about the coursework itself, the price, the discount, and what you can do to look forward to the July 1st launch. The coursework itself, for those of you that are curious and you've attended this webinar, spent some time with us to learn more about this program, it takes about 20 to 30 hours to complete, and does have a designation attached to it called the Behavioral Financial Advisor. That designation does come with 20 hours of CE that you complete every 2 years with a $99 renewal fee. So with that, we will open it up for some questions, and Michael, our producer, will give us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what all you have been talking about.
I should mention, I think I saw it in here, that a lot of you that are already BFAs have probably influenced this coursework. Ryan talked about it. Some of you literally might have been in some of our focus groups, because I'm not sure who's all signed on. But I will say this, and this was kind of interesting as we look at the data, the use of the tools. It says, where did I want to get it? It was one piece. I just lost the thing that I wanted. In the BFA skill set, the educating clients, 81% of BFAers say they use behavioral finance with clients. They use it and they express why. 95% of the respondents use the tools that they were introduced to in the course, the smart money philosophy, the alignment model, the certainty of uncertainty. Those are the 3 most popular tools of the previous course, which are still therefore in here. And 86% of respondents connect money to an emotional and intellectual process. So it works. We know it works. You've often heard, some of you have heard me say, almost nothing works always, but behavioral financial advisors increase the odds of experiencing with their clients, helping their clients achieve their goals. And that's a great psychological reward as well as a tremendous financial reward.
So
any questions?
Will the presentation deck be made available? Yes, James, we will send that out in our follow-up emails to all of you. Christine, what was the name of the podcast? The podcast's name is Making the Ideal Real. You can find it on any of the streaming podcast systems.
And you can get it on our website.
And you can also find it on our website too, at thinktoperform.com. Under the resource tab, there's a podcast link. There's also we mentioned throughout this program an exercise called the values exercise. That too appears on our website, that you can go and meet your ideal self and learn a little bit more about yourself. And that exercise is free to use. So
I would suggest you consider just going online today. It'll take you 10 minutes. You go online, discover your ideal self, and you play a card game online is really what it is. We do the same thing with physical cards, but we just launched this new online exercise late October of last year, and we've crossed 50,000 people who've completed the exercise. So please get on, go ahead, complete it. It's free. We don't even sell your name. We don't even know your name. So it's okay. And I should mention, can I mention our Evolve conference real quick?
Sure can.
We have October 3rd and October 4th. Morgan Housel, who is featured on the podcast that goes out today, that's today's Making the Ideal Real podcast. Morgan will be back this year. He was here last year at our Evolve conference, very, very positive response, and he's coming back bigger and better, and the lineup is extraordinary. So for those of you that are BFAers or are interested in the topic, obviously this particular year I think will be our best ever as we deal with the lineup. I don't know if you want to talk more about who also is on, but the breakout sessions and keynotes will support what you guys are doing as advisors.
Yeah, we have a lot of practitioners talking about practice growth and behavioral financial advice. Those are our breakout paths that will provide you with elements to improve and enhance your client experience through behavioral financial advice, and also learn how to scale and accelerate your growth of your practice through leadership, through succession planning, through sales activities, through developing of people, a lot of different areas that we teach throughout those breakouts. And then finally, our main stage and the whole theme of our conference is about how to enable you as a financial advisor, financial professional, business owner to focus on the areas that need your attention. And there's a lot of our keynotes. You can find that too on our website because we are at time.
We're at time.
And we want to be.
Thank you for sharing some of your day to day with us. We really appreciate you. And we hope that we've added a little value to your life today, a little joy. And we wish you well. Thank you for making a difference. The world needs what you do.